Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have called Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans bluff, as the MAGA Republicans and Trump have tried to distract from how devastating the Epstein file partial release has been by focusing on subpoenaing Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, and Trump and MAGA wanted to hold them in contempt if Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton did not show up at a House oversight deposition. But guess what Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton just said? Not only do we want to show up to testify, we want to do it in public, because we believe if we do it in private, you'll try to cover up that also. So let's do a public hearing so the entire world can see you haul in former President Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and talk about the Epstein files while Donald Trump is hiding and lying and saying that the Epstein files vindicates Donald Trump, when in fact there are 38,000 references to Donald Trump in the Epstein files that were released. Remember, it was only a partial release of 3 million documents. We believe there are at least 3 million more documents. As many as 50 million pages may still be concealed by Trump's DOJ. And also there are a lot of improper redactions right now, which still could be implicating Donald Trump. So here's what was reported moments ago. The Clintons both agreed to testify in the Epstein investigation in February before MAGA Republican Congressmember James Comer's Oversight Committee, and they want a public hearing. The Clintons give dates in the letter to Comer. They say February 26th, have Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State. February 27th, let's do former President Clinton. Though you have notably never asked the Clintons to appear in an open hearing, we now believe that will best suit our concerns about fairness. Now, this comes at a time where more disgusting and despicable emails of Donald Trump are coming out. This is some real grotesque stuff. And you remember, this is what James Comer was saying recently as well. Let's play this clip of James Comer, who said, "We're going to hold the Clintons in contempt. We haven't heard from them." Here, play this first clip of Comer.
Unanimously by the committee in a bipartisan manner, we will move next week in the House Oversight Committee markup to hold former President Clinton in contempt of Congress.
Yeah. And here's Comer saying, "We're going to hold them in contempt." Let's play this.
Bonding for the documents. She started producing the documents. Then Congress voted for the discharge petition to send another message, and we all voted for that. They are sending documents. They sent a big batch. The Democrats were unhappy. They said there weren't enough redactions, so now the DOJ is going through trying to make sure they redact everything. So as from my standpoint, the Department of Justice is cooperating. They are turning over documents. We would all like for them to turn documents over quicker, but at the end of the day, they are complying. President Trump is answering your questions about Epstein. He's answered them over and over and over again. Who we haven't heard from is Bill Clinton, and I stated why. The amount of time that Epstein spent with Clinton while he was president and post-presidency. So I don't think it's out of line for former President Clinton to come in for a bipartisan subpoena and sit down and answer questions. So thank you all very much.
As a reminder, when the Epstein File Transparency Act was passed, here's what former President Clinton had to say. The Epstein Files Transparency Act imposes a clear legal duty on the U.S. Department of Justice to produce the full and complete record the public demands and deserves. However, what the Department of Justice has released so far and the manner in which it did so makes one thing clear. Someone or something is being protected. We do not know whom, what, or why, but we do know this. We need no such protection. Accordingly, we call on President Trump to direct Attorney General Bondi to immediately release any remaining materials referring to, mentioning, or containing photographs of Bill Clinton. This includes, without limitation, any records that may exist. And then it goes on to say, release all the file, release everything. That's what they put out a few weeks ago. Now they're saying they're going to testify at a public hearing, and they want it to be public. Now it's in James Comer's court to see what he does there. And by the way, this begs the question, Donald Trump needs to testify also. He's all throughout this. But of course, Donald Trump will be scared. We know that about Donald Trump. I want to bring in Democratic Congressmember Raja Krishnamoorthi. Congressman Krishnamoorthi, it's great to see you right now. Let's talk about this because, you had the MAGA Republicans wanting to create this publicity stunt and try to distract, deflect. And, you have former President Clinton and Hillary Clinton calling their bluff and saying, all right, we'll do it in public. And so now, Comer and these MAGAs, they want to do everything in private and they want to lie about what's said in these hearings and in these depositions. So it creates an interesting dynamic. What do you make of it all?
I think it's a good move, and I welcome that. I think that the more that the public sees and hears what's going on, the more trust they're going to have in it. And I think that it also keeps everyone on their good behavior, right? I mean, it's less likely that, the Republicans are going to get into all kinds of other topics or areas having nothing to do with the subject matter at hand. So I think it's a good thing. Look, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And so we need transparency generally around here in Congress, and certainly with regard to the Epstein files and any deposition, really.
Which makes me think too, like, where are all of these Trump cabinet people? Where are the hearings? And obviously the answer is that the MAGA Republicans, because they control the House, they are controlling what the hearings are discussed. The Democrats had their way. They would bring in Bondi every week, and they'd bring in Kristi Noem every week, and Tom Homan and Pete Hegseth. But just one of the notable things that I observe is, the Office of Management and Budget Director doesn't show up to the Budget Committee. Noem leaves after 20 minutes like, she was like, just showing up to like a party and saying hello and leaving at the last. Like, these people need to sit down and be grilled. It's just weird they don't testify.
That's called accountability, my friend. You know all about it. And I think that that's lacking with this administration. There's no accountability. They don't think that they actually need to be held accountable or need to, be forthright or transparent or open or honest with the American people. That's why, as you said, within the Oversight Committee, I've called for Kristi Noem to come before us and answer questions. Of course, I've asked for her resignation. I've asked her to be fired. If she's not fired, I've also joined calls to impeach her. But a number of people need to come and testify under oath. And that is the key about what the heck is going on, because they're acting with impunity right now. And that is not okay. And I'm hearing it from all corners. I'm hearing from Democrats, of course, but also independents and Republicans. I'm hearing this from across the spectrum.
Right. Because these Trump cabinet people and these MAGA leaders, they do their dance where they show up on what I call state regime media, which is Fox. They have their talking points. They lie, they defame, and then they hide. And it's like, okay, you believe these things, go testify, swear you're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and actually get questions in an adversarial process, because that's just the way our government was set up. And, you have the Clintons saying they're going to be testifying in public, but why, Elon Musk hasn't testified in public. He's all over this list. I mean, right. All of these people who are hanging out with Trump, they ain't testifying in public, and they just go on their social media platforms and, and defame and hurt people.
Totally. And remember, when Democrats were in charge of Congress and we had the White House, so to speak, that did not stop us from bringing administration officials on a regular basis to the House to testify in the open about whatever they are working on. That is absolutely essential. And that's what really, ensures at the end of the day that people know what's going on. And if they don't like what's happening, to have a say in it real time. And that is not happening right now with the Trump administration, as you can tell. So we have to keep pressing. We have to put pressure. Fortunately, we do have one lever that is extremely effective, and that is the power of the purse. And I think that is why, by the way, hopefully we'll be able to negotiate some meaningful changes with regard to the DHS, because as I've said before, I think we have to abolish Trump's ICE and we have to just revamp how things are done with DHS.
And here's the thing, right? ICE and Border Patrol, they right now are terrorizing communities. They're terrorizing your state of Illinois. Of course, they terrorizing Chicago. We see what they're doing in Minneapolis and across this country. And I just don't get, you said it very clearly there. ICE and Border Patrol, the way they're composed now, whatever this thing is, this needs to be abolished. Simple, plain, simple. Send Border Patrol to the border to do the border stuff. What are you doing going inland and killing people and attacking people? I just find it so interesting when people are like, oh, that's such a hyperbolic position and so radical. To me, that's the most kind of basic, it's a centrist position in my view of getting rid of terrorists. What are we talking about? Getting people who are engaged in terroristic activity?
Look, I think, what I've said is, we need to first get rid of Kristi Noem, get rid of Greg Movino, masks off, body cameras on, identification on, no more warrantless arrests. You need third-party investigations of abuse of discretion or use of force. And you need a situation where there are no longer roving gangs of ICE and CBP agents through our cities for no reason. It doesn't make any sense. That is abolishing Trump's ICE, in my opinion. That is like completely changing the nature of what's going on. And I got to tell you, I'm hearing this. I'm not just hearing this from Democrats. Now I'm hearing this from a broad swath of people. One person just told me a few minutes ago, her uncle was a Trump voter and he showed up to an ICE protest and then he publicized it to everybody. I think this is like going beyond or transcending any kind of party lines.
And today, because MAGA Republicans refuse to hold hearings, Democrats have to hold like shadow hearings.
Right.
To actually do oversight and bring attention. Like your day has to have a hearing that is technically unofficial, right? Because the MAGA Republicans refuse to address the killings in the street by ICE and Border Patrol. Before we go, talk about that.
Yeah. So in about half an hour, I'm about to participate in a hearing. It's called a shadow hearing because, as you said, the majority is not participating and not convening it. But it's important nonetheless. So it's actually a bicameral shadow hearing, one that's being done with the Senate kind of Government Affairs Committee, Homeland and Government Affairs Committee. And basically, we're going to have a chance to meet with the Renee Good, the family of Renee Good, but also other, I guess, victims of what's happened with DHS. And Chicago, as you know, was ground zero for DHS's operations. And so I'm looking forward to, talking to victims of DHS's operations in Chicago, learning from them what happened, but also shining a light on what happened. So more people understand kind of the stakes of what's absolutely imperative with DHS, which is, changing it completely.
Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, Congressman of Illinois, also happens to be running for the United States Senate seat there. Congressman, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for everything that you do.
Everybody hit subscribe and let's get to 6 million subscribers.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.